everyone. This is Corey with Sims Investment Management. This is another market update. And we're coming to you on President's Day. Hope everybody's having a great start to their year. The market's actually had a continuation of what we saw in the fourth quarter. This year we're up 4 to 5% so far in the S&P 500. And we've started to get the question a lot of, well, now that we're back near all-time highs, shouldn't I be sitting on cash? Shouldn't I be trying to essentially time the market? And like we've said many times before, we're not market timers. We're not, prognosticators. We're planners. And so the answer to that is no. And so I've read a few really good articles this past month, and that's what this newsletter is going to touch on. The first is we've talked a lot about risk aversion versus loss aversion in the past. And so I really like this terminology that talks about most people, when they say they're quote unquote risk adverse, are actually trying to say that they're loss adverse. Because risk is not, you can't eliminate risk. A lot of people think of risk only as volatility. Is their account value going to go up and down? And that is one type of risk, but it's only risk if you need money in the short term. If it's long-term money, then whether or not your money goes up and down is not risk, it's just volatility. And volatility is on the upside and the downside. It's just that the media tends to portray quote-unquote volatility as only a negative thing. It's just not accurate. So when we talk about risk aversion versus loss aversion, there's several other types of risks that a lot of people don't think about. There's reinvestment risk. So if I invest in something today and I get it back in the future, where will the market be? There's interest rate risk. Will interest rates go up or down based on the length of my investment? Will it be able to keep up with inflation? Inflation risk is a huge one. And that's the one that oftentimes people don't think about when they're entering into retirement, or if they're trying to time the market. They don't realize that if I have $1 million today in an account, and in 20 years, if I still have $1 million, I've lost money. I've lost money in the sense that my $1 million is no longer going to buy me $1 million worth of goods and services because inflation has gone up. And so when people get too quote unquote conservative early in retirement, it can actually cause them to create a lot of risk to their financial plan later in retirement because they're not keeping their purchasing power up. We've seen that pretty evident the past few years as inflation's taken off. And part of this is because of the never-ending parade of nonsense, and that's mentioned in our newsletter this month that Morgan Housel mentions in his new book. I love that terminology. We've used the terminology before of apocalypse du jour, which is essentially the media using any means possible to spread fear in order to sell clicks and eyeballs and advertisements because they know fear sells. So I usually don't like to do this, but I'm going to read off a quote here, and this also is in our newsletter. This is from James Clear and his book Atomic Habits, which talks about when scientists analyze people who appear to have tremendous self-control, it turns out those individuals aren't at all that different from those who are struggling. Instead, disciplined people are better at structuring their lives in a way that does not require heroic willpower and self-control. In other words, they spend less time in tempting situations. The people with the best self-control are typically the ones who need to use it the least. It's easier to practice self-restraint when you don't have to use it very often. So yes, perseverance, grit, and willpower are essential to success, but the way to improve these qualities is not by wishing you were a more disciplined person, but by creating a more disciplined environment. Why I think that's incredibly applicable to us is when I hear about clients checking their accounts multiple times a day or a week or even a month, what I'm really thinking about is they're putting themselves in a position where they are eventually going to make a knee-jerk bad reaction because they won't have the willpower anymore, and they're going to end up derailing their financial plan because they keep exposing themselves to having to exhibit this self-discipline. It would be very similar to if you're trying to go on a diet, you wouldn't go tempt yourself at a all-you-can-eat buffet 3 times a day. You do your best to stay away from that. So I want to leave, again, I can't take full credit for this, but one of my favorite authors, Nick Murray, talked about real financial advice doesn't try to scare you. Real financial advice turns complex topics into simple explanations. Real financial advice doesn't offer predictions, it offers perspective. It shows you the pros and cons, the costs and the benefits. That's what we try and do here for you. We try and make the complex simple. We try and educate you so that way you can make informed decisions and ultimately create a plan that's going to get you to your financial goals. So, hope this video was helpful. Please pass it along to anybody that might need it, and we'll see you next month.